I learned how to see how old people were. Trudeau is somewhere between 13 and 15. And that's not good when you're 50.
You can't stop the man. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today's top story, we got Jordan Peterson absolutely destroying Justin Trudeau. He talks about his mental age and how immature the guy is, gives a prediction on the upcoming election. We've also got a CTV panel that's poking fun at Justin Trudeau, making fun of him. The whole situation we've got going on here with the fall budget, as well as with Melanie Joly and the whole article in the New York Times. We've also got more public praying and Syrians taken to the street. A lot of conflict over there, rebels, all that kind of stuff. But let's jump into this. I got a couple of clips here from this interview with Jordan Peterson and his daughter. And Jordan says quite a few interesting things here. He's talking about the election that's coming up here in Canada and what he thinks his predictions will be on it. He really rips into Trudeau multiple times, just him as a person, his age, like his mental age, not his physical, biological age.
Problem is, we're going to find out in Canada that things are a lot worse than we thought, because I'm sure that Trudeau is so spectacularly incompetent that there's endless discoveries of corruption and idiocy to be unveiled. And I'm afraid for Pierre Poilievre that he's going to be left with a terrible mess and will immediately be blamed by the remnants of the legacy media, which he'll also help dispense with, because I think the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation is on the chopping block, which it richly deserves.
I've been saying this for a while. Think of how many corruptions and scandals I'm dishing out here every single day. There's practically a new one every single day, if not multiple. And that's just what's public. Think of what is not public, because you got different organizations digging up stuff. Just my previous video, you had that organization digging up that $1.9 billion is being shuttled over to the government's bank account for them to spend. This is only stuff that's been dug up. So there's going to be so many things. Once Pierre Poilievre and all the Conservatives get into power, they'll pull back the curtain and it'll just be like cockroach, mold infested, just nasty mess that needs to be cleaned up. So I think we're really just at the tip of the iceberg, just as Jordan Peterson said here. Next up, Jordan talks about NDP, the Liberals, and where he thinks the Conservatives will lie, how much of the vote they'll actually get, and what will happen to the Liberals.
Much harder than the United States has. Obviously, Trump won a spectacular victory, but it's still about a 50-50 split in the United States. Whereas in Canada, it's going to go 90-10, I think.
You think? I don't know.
Oh, it will in terms of the election results. Oh, I could see a situation easily where the Liberals lose their party status, because you have to have a certain number of seats. You have to win a certain number of ridings, constituencies, to maintain your status as a party.
He thinks 90-10. I think that's a bit extreme. I'm all for it if it happens. And he's right. You have to have at least 12 seats to remain official party status. That's why you've got like the Green Party. They don't have official party status, even though they are a party in the House of Commons. I think this is quite possible. The Liberals could lose official party status, and this would just be devastating to that party. It should be wiped off the map for what they've done to us. Could they ever recover from that? I don't think so.
Party, I could easily see that, not the Liberals failing at that and actually not existing as a political party anymore. That'll be Justin Trudeau's legacy.
Well, they've moved so far left, there isn't a political party there.
Well, there's certainly not a socialist political party left.
Yeah.
Now, the NDP, the Socialist Party, will pick up a fair number of the people who are too daft to know that the whole woke mob scene of idiocy is over. And there's, the NDP in Canada has picked up 20% of the population since like 1960. That's unlikely to change. But the Conservatives are going to win an overwhelming victory, and they're actually conservative, God willing.
And finally, we've got a clip here where he talks about Justin Trudeau's age, his mental age, and just goes completely off on the guy.
Anyways, it's a painful thing to watch the country degenerate into fractious poverty as a consequence of nothing other than immaturity, which is like the hallmark of Trudeau. He's so immature. He looks like a 14-year-old. It's no wonder he was like, I learned this when I was a therapist. I learned to look at people to see how old they were psychologically. Like, I could watch my clients while they were telling me stories, especially stories about their past. They would take on the facial expressions of children sometimes when they were talking about past experiences, especially traumatic experiences. And I learned how to see how old people were. And I swear, this is not a personal slur. Trudeau is somewhere between 13 and 15. And that's not good when you're 50. You know, he was
Yeah, that's not good when you're the prime minister of a country.
at a Taylor Swift concert the other day, non-ironically handing out friendship bracelets while Montreal burned. It's not acceptable. And so,
I mean, the guy's just creeping around, taking photos with little girls. Like, it's just, ugh. The whole thing is ick.
he was the pretty boy of the progressive movement, and he's going to get his comeuppance. But I'm afraid, as a wounded narcissist, that he's going to do plenty of damage. You know, the country doesn't deserve a leader as spectacular as he is, and he's certainly going to show that to everyone in this last year of his rule, because he'll take his revenge. He will take his revenge. He's going to do that with Bill C-63, which is the most totalitarian bill I've ever seen.
You think they'll actually pass that?
It's through first reading. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I think they'll pass it.
He talks more about this bill. It's the Minority Report bill, where if they think you're going to commit a crime, then they can put an ankle monitor on you. They can monitor you. They can take you off social media for a full year. It's terrible. The whole thing is just absolutely draconian. If you want to check out this interview afterwards, I'll link it up down below. Just think about this here for a second. How much damage can Justin Trudeau do to Canada before he leaves? That's a scary thought. This is a guy who's been beaten down by the public.
Small fringe minority.
Literally F Trudeau flags everywhere, bumper stickers. He doesn't like those. He said on numerous interviews he hates seeing those, especially when his kids see them. Narcissists don't like it when they're challenged. Narcissists don't like it when they're humiliated. He could really continue to push our country further and further down the ladder here, destroying this country. How far will Trudeau go? Next up, we got this panel on CTV talking about fall economic statement and Melanie Joly's bid to be prime minister. They make fun of both the Liberals and Melanie Joly.
Is it a big deal, one way or the other, if this document actually makes it into the public view?
So they're talking about fall economic statement, which Chrystia Freeland has been delaying. I think she's waiting for a 50-point basis cut that's coming on Wednesday here from the Bank of Canada, because then she can just lean on that and try to distract from the terrible spending that she's done over the past year, the overspending likely.
It's coming. It's like Christmas or the colonization of Mars. It's coming. You can't stop it. Just don't know when exactly. Look, 20 points behind the polls. Donald Trump's threatening to annex the country and demolish its economy. I do think maybe being a little unfashionably late with the fall economic statement might be the least of their troubles. But, you know, we're going to see it the next couple of days. The challenge is that, you know, it is difficult to imagine what are plausible economic outlooks that you can rely upon, because so much will depend upon the actions of Trump. So I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see scenarios laid out. If tariffs happen and they're 10 points, if tariffs happen and they're 20, what does that mean? And my guess is they're going to try to use the fall economic statement to shock people a little bit around the tariff issue and say, this is real, this is coming, this is a vital economic crisis in apprehension, because you know, it could drive us deep into a recession if, in fact, the worst comes to pass. So that's my guess. And I don't think we'll have to wait too much longer.
Corey, do you think that that's what the government will likely do with the document? And why do you think Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre this week was hot on it, right? I'm going to give a Christmas gift to the finance minister and give her a few hours of our time to table this on an opposition day. Well,
it's hard to know exactly what the thinking is behind it, but I could speculate on a few things. I think Scott touched on one of them. Like any economic forecast that you make right now in the face of 25% tariffs is going to be pretty problematic. Like, it's hard to imagine that they will have modeled that in any way that is remotely accurate, even if they tried. It's such an unprecedented set of circumstances. You know, we're also seeing unemployment tick up 6.8%, I think, right now. So, you know, if we're not sliding into a recession anyway, we certainly will be barreling into a recession if we're facing 25% tariffs. Any projections the government makes on revenue or what the economy is going to do are going to be way off. I don't think anyone is that smart that they could model that correctly. And it's talking about really economic bad news, which is something that is going to benefit the Conservatives and not the Liberals. So giving them some time to make those expressions is probably not a bad day for them. But it belies like the larger point. You know, it's only because the other opposition parties are working with the Conservatives that the filibuster continues. So at a certain point, you got to ask the question: are we not, in a de facto non-confidence position? If nothing can happen in the House because all of the opposition parties are united against the government, even though they haven't, defeated the government on a fiscal bill, at what point, is the dysfunction at such a level that you got to go to the polls?
That's a great point, and they should put that into legislation. There should be other ways to get rid of Trudeau, basically. The party should be able to get rid of him, like the Liberals. They should be able to get rid of him. They took that out of the party. That should be one. There should be the ability to have a referendum by Canadians. This is another example. There should be multiple ways, like 4 or 5 ways that an election is forced. Because right now, Trudeau's just using us however he wants. He's using the country as his own personal little piggy bank, flying jet setting around the world. He keeps bringing his kids on world tours while continuing to implement terrible policies that are destroying Canada.
That's an interesting question. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it has been 10 weeks, right? 10 weeks of complete historic obstruction and gridlock. Nothing's getting done in the House. I think it's foolish that my own party, the New Democrats, have not put closure on the issue to get actually stuff done in the House. Not just for the issues that Scott and Corey just mentioned in terms of the tariff cliff that we're facing with Trump being elected and coming in the new year. But as Corey mentioned too, unemployment's up, growth down. Like, these are all bad economic factors or metrics that the government is facing down. And so I found it extraordinary this week that and it should be noted that the Speaker had to step in to basically ensure that MPs are doing their job, their constitutional job, which is to vote on the supplementary estimate. So it's a really geeky, in the weeds document. But if that doesn't go through, we kind of get to this brinkmanship that Canadians would be familiar with in the US, where they kind of take the government to the edge of not having the money they need to operate. And do we really want to kind of basically replicate that kind of chaos and dysfunction that we see in the States almost, annually, with the government bringing to a standstill because one party or the other, typically U.S. Republicans, kind of grind the House to a halt and refuse to let money flow. And that's what we're facing here. And that's why we're having the vote next week on the supplements that the Speaker had to step in to ensure that happened. The offer that Mr. Poilievre put on the table in terms of the 2 hours isn't needed. The government could table the fall economic update at any point. It could also table the public accounts, which we need to see.
It's also very late, I will say.
It's super late. Yeah. And it's like we need to see those numbers to see, where we were and how the spending went and what the deficit is.
As I mentioned, Chrystia Freeland is waiting until the Bank of Canada drops the rates. Then she can just say, look, there's good news over here. Don't look at the bad news over there.
Hannah, maybe slightly less serious note. I also want to get all of your opinions on Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly and that article in the New York Times that came out this week that was like a sort of glowing profile, Scott, that also labeled her the next successor for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. She insists, I've been behind the Prime Minister since 2012. What's your read, though, on the timing of that, which she also says she had no control over, by the way? But what's your read on the timing of it and how that might land?
Well, my reading is that it's damn strange. If it had come out in August and September, that kind of era, we're back in the pre-Trump tariff era. Feels like it's an era ago. But if it had come out then in the fall when we were talking about Trudeau's leadership and whether he was going to stay, I think it would have been a real thunderbolt. But now it feels like a piece that's out of sync with contemporary political reality. If anything, the Trump challenge has emboldened the Prime Minister. You can't find a Liberal anywhere in Ottawa, across the country, who thinks that the Prime Minister is seriously contemplating leaving. And so it's a nice, pre-leadership portrait of the kind that you might do if there was going to be a leadership race. But without it, it just seems kind of odd and out of place. I will say the other thing is that if you really get some Liberals, particularly in Ottawa, out late over a beer, there's a little bit of whining about the way the PMO has been hard on those who might think about a leadership run, really keeping the clamp on them, but a little jealousy about the way that maybe they've treated Joly different, that she alone has been permitted to kind of test the waters, put together some organization. So it's kind of interesting to see.
That's probably because there's a different relationship between Justin Trudeau and Melanie Joly versus all the other ministers. There's a reason why she's the Foreign Affairs Minister who goes around the world with Justin Trudeau, away from everyone else.
Within the salons of Ottawa, how this plays. Maybe just further evidence that she's on her own track.
Yeah, Scott's right. I mean, look at the example of Anita Anand, for example. That's the first one that comes to mind, right? Once her kind of leadership aspirations became discussed more publicly, you saw a pretty I mean, I think it was viewed at the time as a demotion in cabinet, Corey. Melanie Joly, everyone's talked about. From what I understand, people in and around the Prime Minister's office don't mind the thought of her as a successor. But like Scott said, I don't think there's any Liberal anymore who thinks that Justin Trudeau is going anywhere right now.
I don't know, how to interpret it. It's probably very unwelcome if you're Melanie Joly. She doesn't really want to be the face of the insurrection within cabinet. So, I don't think it matters. He's not leaving. There isn't a race to run in as it stands right now, but it's not a welcome headline in a time of many troubles for these guys.
Captain Schmuck's not going anywhere. He's way too arrogant and narcissistic to give up the reins, give up the power. He would never do anything that's for the benefit of someone else. It's always for himself. I'm sure it's like that in his family, too.
He's not leaving. I think that's the takeaway right now.
Yeah. And it's also a strange place. Like, I get the external validation of the New York Times, but if you're going to launch your leadership race, do you really want the first big story to be in the New York Times? She did get her echo pieces in Canadian news media, but it did seem strange, like maybe a PR coup, but not a political coup, And she is a formidable organizer. She does have strength in Quebec, but I don't think that this was the launch now. It is interesting that it came out through her staff that she had done this profile in July, and she did have stronger messaging, if you recall, in the August cabinet retreat. And that obviously was when she was hoping something like this would have come out, when we were in that whole hubbub of discussion around will Trudeau leave or not. And as my colleagues have said, it's kind of past that right now. Not that we're not still speculating it, but in terms of the real caucus demands for him to leave now.
Well, this one also came out, I think it's kind of significant to note, a few days after, like a total, condemnation of her in the Toronto Star. Justin Ling had written a piece basically based on her performance at the Halifax Security Forum that was not positive in any way. And this was literally as far away from that as you could get.
And foreign affairs is
Melanie Joly's a complete buffoon. The fact that we're even talking about this, come on. You could put one of the Liberals' pets in the PM chair and it would do a better job than any of them.
Hard place to run a leadership contest from. It's too externally focused. You want to be in a domestic portfolio to be running that race.
Well,
maybe that
cabinet shuffle, right? Any moment now. Reset, everyone, reset. Okay, I gotta leave it there.
That's absolutely ridiculous if they cabinet shuffle. They just need to shuffle themselves straight over to the local jail. They'll release it on the last day of the sitting because it's going to be bad and they know it. Yeah, they'll release it whenever there's the biggest distraction. I hate listening to Monk. She brings nothing. Look at the state of Canada's foreign policy. You really want Joly anywhere near political power? Exactly. She is just such a mindless buffoon. NYC headline is actually a punchline tapped by Trudeau. There's a bunch of people in here making fun of Elizabeth May, why she's saying anything. It's from the very beginning of this video.
Looking at changing climatic conditions, fall doesn't always occur where it used to, neither does spring. So it appears that climate change has also budged the seasons on a fall economic state.
Get Elizabeth May out of there. She is done. Next up, we got chaos here in Canada. It says supporters of rebels that toppled Assad's regime in Syria just hours ago celebrate Mississauga, Ontario. They wave flags, including Palestine's. Canada has become unrecognizable. We've also got this, more mass praying in Canada. So it's ironic, just in my previous video, I showed you, it says here, Premier Legault said they're going to be banning mass prayers in public, and here they are literally the next day out doing this. Now, mass praying in a park, this is a gray area, but blocking downtown streets in Toronto, blocking mass infrastructure for praying, yeah, that's going to be sending people to jail. So Legault did say, was it just yesterday, that prayer would not be allowed in mass like this, in public parks, outside. It has to be done in the buildings they're designed for. So this is the defiance that is followed. Why? This just looks stupid too. It's Canada. Why are you praying on the cold ground? What's the temperature in Montreal right now? I looked it up. It's -8. Who wants to be doing this in -8? This just looks stupid. Suit yourself. Might not have that many days left. You can do this. They'll do what they can to destroy Christianity. I mean, you look at the amount of churches that have been burned down. It's like, it's pretty obvious what's going on. I say that as someone who isn't religious. I don't have a horse in the race here of either side. It's obvious over the past year and a half, there's been an attack on Christianity in Canada and around the world. Why are Muslims praying in front of a cathedral? Jumping over to my group, let's see what memes we've got today. Justin Trudeau says you don't need pew-pews to protect themselves, so why does he need bulletproof SUVs along with bodyguards in dozens? Yeah, great question. 1.9 million scammed from Edmontonians using fake AI video of Trudeau, Elon Musk. Oh, we knew this was going to happen. I was just playing around with this last night. You can just stick a photo into these things and it turns it into a video. It's just stupid. This technology shouldn't exist. This one is hilarious. Look at this. Look at this guy wearing sandals.
Snow is falling and friends are calling you.
Okay, who made that Christmas version? This song is hilarious.
Snow is falling and friends are calling you.
Congratulations, Canada. You've done it. Canada now holds more Indian citizens, surpassing every other country other than India itself. Peel Police in Brampton also carry the largest crew worldwide of Indian officers outside of India. Canada will become the 51st state. Tell me differently. You know, I think America would really like that because of how much resources and land we have. They could really expand just on everything. Statistically, an AR pew-pew is much less likely to be involved in a crime than a Liberal member of Parliament. Woo! That one stings because it's true. You're telling me I can't pick my bedtime, but I can pick my gender. It's just so stupid. The clown world is too stupid in a toxic relationship with government of Canada. There we have it. So Jordan Peterson's prediction on Justin Trudeau intentionally destroying Canada. I think this is a real possibility, not just a possibility. I think it's already happening. Ever since the middle of the year, about June, July, I think Justin Trudeau knew there's no way he can win, especially when his own advisor stepped down and told him, basically said, you can't win this next election. Didn't want to have that on his track record of losing. He left. Trudeau just robbed the pension fund the other day. I mean, one bonehead decision after another. If you ask how much worse can it get, I think it can get a lot worse because Trudeau can just keep driving us further into the ground. How is he going to respond to the situation with Trump and the tariffs? There's a lot more to come here because we just can't get rid of this filthy rat.